So before I hand you off to our panel today, my name is David McGill. I'm in the marketing team here at Scorebuddy, and I'm going to be your moderator for the webinar. Today's topic, as I mentioned there, is around 5 tips for improving coaching in your contact center. Before we kick off, I'm just going to cover a couple of things in terms of the audience breakdown. So as you can see here from the locations, a majority of folks are dialing in from the US and UK. And we probably see some of the team from Scorebuddy in Ireland, as well as South Africa, and a good 30% from other regions as well. And there's also good to see a breakdown of the different industries that people dial in from. So we always typically see financial services as a good chunk of folks, and technology and retail and that. So yeah, it's good to see the usual suspects in terms of the industries dialing in for this one today. And then just the last slide before we jump in terms of introduction. So Rory Kitt from Scorebuddy is our host today. He's going to host a panel discussion. So Rory, I'll let you do your introduction, please, and if you want to introduce the rest of the panel. Thank you, Rory.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, David. Much appreciated. And guys, welcome along today to our webinar all around kind of tips for coaching. As David said, my name is Rory Kitt. I'm a senior customer success manager here with Scorebuddy. Coming up in about a year and a half now, so I'd like to think I'm quite adept at kind of talking about this, and I'm really looking forward to kind of going through this discussion today with the rest of the panel, and really love having you all here on the call as well today. Robin, I'd maybe throw it over to yourself for your own introduction as well.
Oh, hello everybody. My name is Robin Mooney, and I'm the quality manager at Alivet Pet Pharmacy. We are an online pet pharmacy that works with I think we've got about 7 white labels. So with the exception of Chewy, we are probably your provider of online pharmacy goods. I've been with Alivet for about 5 years, and prior to this, had a lot of experience in sales as well. So I'm loving this presentation because we can focus on coaching tips for people that are in sales and people that are more just in customer service. So hopefully you'll get a little bit of both out of this.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Robin. And Monique, yourself as well, please.
Hi, happy to be here. So hello everybody, I'm Monique Wintelkamp. Me and my company, we do all things human. So everything from emotional intelligence, team coaching, executive coaching, specializing in communication and leadership development and sales development as well. So we get involved in lots of things, but my real passion is certainly coaching. So very excited to be here today.
Thanks very much, Monique. And we are all very excited to have you both, guys. Before we get into, I suppose you'd say, the actual kind of tips we're going to cover today, we have a few different polls we'd like you guys to kind of maybe vote on and interact with. And David, if you wouldn't mind, if we could look at maybe the first poll.
Yep, let me launch that now. Okay, so everyone should see the poll on the screen. So we'll give about 20-30 seconds for this. And if you wouldn't mind taking a read through that. So how effectively does your contact center currently implement personalized coaching plans for agents? So you have 5 different options there, from very effectively all the way through to not at all. So it'll be interesting to see how many answer that one. I'll say, okay, so it's fairly even between a couple of the answers now, and it's good to see some that are struggling. So yeah, you're definitely at the right webinar. So let me see. I think we're more or less done. Another couple of seconds. Okay, so let me end that poll and share the results on the screen. So any thoughts from the panel on the results of the first poll? Any surprises?
I will say, I think the good thing I can see from it straight away is that not at all was not picked by anyone. And I would say it's a big positive, you know, and that obviously we can see here a small bit of the not very effective, maybe being the second biggest, but I think it's good to see that obviously a lot of you have coaching plans in place. Really great to see somewhat effectively being up there as well. But Monique, Robin, have you any thoughts on this maybe as well? I think it's an interesting thing to kind of see here. It's a decent kind of change between all 5.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it even goes down to teams. It's not necessarily just a company-wide thing. Some teams might be really good at doing this in certain sections of organizations from experience, but then others not. So it'd be interesting if you're one of the ones that have answered, yeah, we're actually quite good at this. I wonder what maybe some of your peers in other areas of the business would be saying as well about theirs.
I would agree with that, Monique. There are differences in, your mid-level, your supervisors, in their ability to connect and act on the coaching. So that's our biggest thing, being consistent across all of those teams, where some might be excelling and others struggle.
Excellent. Okay, well, listen, I'll close the poll. I'll pop back on for the next one, Rory, and I'll let you take it away. And just remind everyone, we do have some time at the end for questions. So if you have any questions for the panel, please pop them into the chat and we'll get to them right at the end. So I'll let you continue now, Rory. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David. Much appreciated. And listen, that poll really leans quite well to our first tip that we're going to be looking at today, guys, which is personalized coaching plans. So, in I would say kind of a dynamic kind of contact center environment, the whole one size fits all approach, it's often kind of quite ineffective. Personalized coaching plans, I find at least, allow supervisors and others to kind of tailor the coaching sessions to meet the unique needs of each agent or individual. The approach itself, I think, kind of helps in addressing individual challenges, I would say, from my own experience. And it also fosters that culture of continuous improvement and engagement, which is exactly what you need for your agents to really kind of improve and go forward. So I suppose question here really, how can contact centers effectively implement personalized coaching plans, and what benefits have you, maybe the panel here, observed from maybe using data-driven insights in coaching? Monica, I might go to you first on that. Have you kind of, what would be your thoughts on the personalized side of things for coaching?
Yeah, so coaching in general, at its heart, it's all about being personalized to the person you're having a conversation with. Otherwise, you're just doing training or mentoring or developing. It's not coaching. Coaching is about developing the person in front of you. So without having that personalized approach, understanding maybe where they're succeeding, maybe some of the areas they're struggling, without that data in whatever form you get it, you're not able to effectively coach. So some of that data may come from analysis systems you have in place that give you that incredible data and that output that you as coach, but also the agents can look at and go, okay, so what are we seeing here? And have great conversations around it. That way, agents feel like they're included as part of the journey. They're not being told to. There's stuff that they can really hang your hat on. I have no idea where that saying comes from, but I'm using it. Hang your hat on as part of it, so you know where you're going moving forward. This cuts through a lot of the issues I have heard, especially within call centers, where I get a feeling of, I feel like I'm just a number, an agent at the desk. Whereas if you have that personalized approach, they feel more than that. They feel heard and understood. And this is data then that can transcend just their team leader or their manager. It's conversations that can be had at all levels.
Could not agree more as well. And listen, from a personal level, many moons ago, when I was a younger and better looking man, I worked in contact centers myself. And believe it or not, the place I worked in used Scorebuddy. And I felt sometimes at times they didn't take advantage of some of the opportunities that we had to kind of focus one on one. I suppose, Robin, in that kind of vein, to go over to you, as someone who's quite into coaching, would you also agree with this, or what else would you find even within Alivet yourself that kind of helps with these personalized coaching plans?
Well, I think the key is, and as we're going to go through each of these 5 tips today, we all will have a certain guideline that we're going to follow within each of those coaching sessions, the things we want to touch on. But as we're saying here, and Monique is put it so well, we have to find the way to connect with our agent. Each person is different. Everyone has different trigger points, different things that are more important to them, or ways that you can connect with them. So I think it's very important for a supervisor, or a leader, or a coach to get to know their team and sort of look at those nuances between each person, because people learn differently and you've got to find a way to connect with them. Um, If you're just going in there telling them what to do and they're one of those people that has to do it by themselves, learn hands-on, you've got to approach coaching that way. If it's somebody that you can tell them, go tell them to read it, they just go do it, then you approach them that way. But that's the key. You've got to connect with that individual and then handle your coaching that way.
Absolutely, for sure. And that leads quite well, guys, into our second poll. I believe David has the second poll ready to go.
Yep, I'm going to just pop back on the screen here and launch our second poll, which should appear now. And it is, what is the most important aspect of delivering effective feedback to contact center agents? So let's have a think about that. And what's the most important aspect? Okay, so you can see the votes starting to come in. Okay, so far there's a clear winner. Let's see if that changes. Okay, we have votes for all of them, which is great. Okay, over 80% voted. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to end that poll now. It looks like we've stalled. Great. Okay, so let me end and share the results. So again, over to the panel for any insights on this. Any surprises?
Clear winner, as we can see there, really, isn't there? Bit surprised now. I suppose a small bit surprised myself on empathy not maybe getting one or two more votes. But
Yeah.
Have you any thoughts, maybe Robin yourself, firstly, on this particular poll?
Well, obviously they're all important, but I agree right there with clarity. You and this again is going to tie into everything else we're talking about. If you know the person you're coaching, you'll have a way of presenting the information that's clear, that they're going to understand it. They'll understand the expectations, what happened, and what to do going forward. I think that's crucial.
For sure, absolutely. Monica, anything else there that maybe stands out to yourself?
Yeah, with the word feedback, you have to have that clarity as a number one. As we move into looking at other areas and tips we look at, that empathy one should definitely be at the top as we go through. But for now, I'll allow that. Clarity is a good place to start.
Perfect. Right. Well, listen, speaking of the poll, we're going to go in now to our second tip, which is effective feedback delivery. So, listen, providing constructive feedback for me, it's essential in contact centers and kind of across many different, if not all, industries. But the way it's delivered, listen, it makes a huge difference. I mean, if you're delivering it in a certain way, people mightn't really take to it. But as we go on, as the guy said, the panelist said, we'll look into it more. So I suppose what we want to kind of explore here is maybe best practices for delivering feedback that truly kind of resonate and hopefully lead to inspiring our agents. And I'll turn to our panel now. So how do you guys really, and I suppose, Robin, I'll start first with you this time. How do you approach feedback delivery to kind of ensure that it's both constructive but maybe motivating as well?
Well, there's 6 things that I approach with coaching. Once that you've figured out what makes that agent tick, then all of these kind of fall into play. And the number one on my list is always set clear goals and expectations. Right there, which matched with that poll exactly. Everybody's on the same page with what we need to do. And from then on, I think it's very important that you're timely. You want to make sure it's consistent with these coachings so that they know to expect it. It's not a surprise. And they know to act on what they need to do because you're going to come back and check. I think that you really need to be specific and very positive when you present. You've got to find ways to present where um, you're rewarding them for their successes and where you're presenting the constructive criticism. Well, not criticism, but the constructive opportunities, so to speak. You want to do that in a way that's not demoralizing, that they're understanding. You're not. Get them to understand you're presenting this to help them, not to just nitpick as some of them think. So you have to present in such a way. You want to use open-ended questions. I think those are very important as well. Ask them what they think. Let them listen to their their conversation. What do you think that went? Tell me what's good about it. Where could we have worked a little bit better? Those open-ended questions, I think, help a lot because, again, sometimes if you're just telling them what to do, certain people are just going to, they may just zone right out. So get them involved in the dialogue. And then you want to make sure that you're following up and you're following through. You want to make sure after the coaching sessions are done, you're following up to check on them. How did they do? And then follow through. If they didn't succeed, what are we going to do to fix it? What do we have to do next? So I feel that it's that kind of a systematic approach to a conversation, and it is a conversation. That's the key. It can't just be you telling them everything that they did right or wrong. You need to get their buy-in and their input.
For sure. I wish you could coach me, Robin. That was, I could not agree more really with you there. One thing I really liked what you said, listen, you said there, you don't want anything to be a surprise. And I think that is really, really true. I mean, there's nothing worse when you're kind of going in and it's not you want to work with your agents. You don't want to be working saying, this is what you did wrong, this is what you need to do right, off, there you go, next. You want to work with them. Monique, and this is, I suppose, luckily enough, Monique, have kind of worked with you. You've coached us about a year ago for those on the call. Scorebuddy combined two different teams into one, and Monique came on board to help us. And I'm not lying when I say this, but in about a week's time, we're all going to sit down and revisit what we did with Monique, the goals we kind of put out. And I suppose from that kind of point, Monique, and how good you were for us, do you have any kind of further thoughts then on that kind of style of that effective feedback delivery?
Yeah, so I'm going to let you in on a couple of quick techniques. You know me, I like to give a bit of extra. Okay, so there's two things that I talk about whenever I go in and do feedback training with leaders, teams, you name it. One is set your intent. Within the first few seconds, talk about the intent of the conversation you're going to be having. Because if you start it with, so how do you think you're going? Just from the off? That's such a stressful question to be asked for someone that's in that situation. So set your intent. My intent for this chat is for me to be able to give you feedback on how you're doing. And at the end of it, I want us to come up with a great plan for your next steps and how I can support you. So from the off, that person's going, okay, great. I'm going to be okay. It's about support. It doesn't matter what the conversation happens. Defenses go down. So that's kind of my tip number one. The next is the SBIR model. You might have heard of it before. So S for situation, B for behavior, I for impact, and R for request or response. I use this still now in whatever situation I am in, but have a Google of it, have a look. But in short, it's an amazing way of removing any judgment, any interpretation you might have of what you're seeing, and talking about it in a really great way. And it can happen with really motivating feedback, but also correcting feedback as well. You'll notice I don't like to use positive or negative while I talk about it. But SBIR, go and have a look. It will change the way you have conversations and give feedback. There you go.
Amazing. Thank you very much. That's great, guys. Well, listen, we'll go on next to the next one. We have another poll, guys. We're big fans of polls, and this is going to be an interesting one, I think, David.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let me launch the next poll, and it is as follows. What aspect of performance metrics do you find most valuable for guiding coaching conversations? And I can see the votes still coming in, so identifying specific areas for improvement, setting clear and achievable goals, tracking progress over time, hasn't got any votes yet, recognizing and rewarding high performance, and then tailoring training to individual needs. Okay, so just over half of you have voted so far, so we'll need to give it another 5 seconds. Okay, we're over the 80%. Okay, that's the most we've got last time, so there's a 14% haven't decided yet, but I think we're just done now. So let me end that and share the results. So yeah, close enough this one. So again, over to the panel for feedback.
Yeah, very interesting. The closest one so far, really. And we've hit on a few of these already, guys. You know, the setting clear setting clear and achievable goals, and tailoring the training. Obviously, something we talked about at the very start. But I suppose And I'll go back to you again, Monique. Is there anything there, even the fact that nobody even kind of wants to track the progress there over time in a sense, but does anything stand out for you there as kind of a coach in your own right?
It's interesting. Well, first of all, it's very exciting seeing the numbers coming in, isn't it? And it all changing. Just have to
Yeah.
call that out. That's quite thrilling. But the other thing I would say is it's hard, isn't it? Because you want the data to do all of the above, all of it. So to try and get someone to choose one is got to be tough. So I'm sure a few of you there were going, well, I guess that, but I kind of want all of it to do it all. And you want good data to be able to allow you to do all of this, because data is only good if it has, in my opinion, multiple aspects that you can use again and again in different scenarios. So if you've got something that can do all of this, amazing, but you've got to start at the beginning. And that will probably, you're rightly, to quite a few of you, tailoring training, identify specific areas, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And Robin, even yourself there, you mentioned a lot of kind of tips there that you like to go through. Is there anything there that stands out for yourself?
Well, I think that, as you said, we've mentioned pretty much all of these already. So I think the key is, and it's actually is probably going to lead into the next topic we're talking about, but figuring out what your baseline is that you want for your individual and for your team, tailoring that conversation and that coaching to fit that agent so that they can achieve those goals. And then the one that we had I don't think anybody picked, then you have to follow through with the tracking. I think it does all go hand in hand. It's just which one do you pick first? Um, but it's a package deal,
Yeah, absolutely. I
so to
couldn't agree
speak.
more. Yeah, for sure. And David, thanks very much for that. Because what we'll do now is we're going to go into our third tip, and I'm very interested in this one myself. So the tip three, guys, today is utilizing performance metrics. Okay, understanding, I would say, and effectively harnessing performance metrics and quality scores as well. They're there to kind of guide those coaching sessions, in my opinion, anyway. And they provide a concrete foundation for evaluating performances, identifying areas for improvement, celebrating success, and so on. And in my own kind of day-to-day work with Scorebuddy, it's something that I focus a lot with our customers. When I'm meeting with them, kind of discussing with them, listen, here's where your certain teams stand. Here's areas that have improved over the last 3 months. Here's areas that maybe have gotten slightly worse over the last 3 months. What can we do to kind of help with this and get better? So, Robin, I'll start with you again this time. How can you successfully really utilize performance metrics in your coaching strategies? And what would be any other best practices maybe that you would recommend?
Okay. Well, I look at the two things. So we're going to look at quality, and we know that quality involves, adherence to SOPs, our guidelines and procedures, and it also involves our agents' tone and manner, their ability to empathize, to recognize and converse with the client in a way that creates great customer satisfaction. So we're looking at that side of it, but we also have to look at the part of the business side of it, which is the numbers, unfortunately. So I combine both. So obviously, we're going to look at those quality scores where I'm going to say, and I'm not a paid promoter for Scorebuddy, but phenomenal reporting. My 1.2 is my favorite report. Just so you know. But so we're going to look at those quality scores and all of those touch points with our agent. But we also have to look at things like our first call resolution or our handle time. We've got to make sure we're handling the calls or our interactions within a certain time frame that is beneficial to the company and the customer as well. And we have to look at if you're in a business where you're trying to retain or you're doing sales, what are their numbers there? And then also a big one is customer satisfaction results. Are they handling that call well? So those are some metrics that drive both the agent behavior and, the dollars for the company. We've got to look at both of those in evaluating the agent. We look at those as the individual agent, but also as a team, how it's doing. And I think, Monique, you had mentioned early on, sometimes a team is better than others at their coaching, or same thing with this. We have to look at the team level to see where we might have some opportunities. But I use all of these to measure agent performance. But again, bringing it back to all of the other topics, we're using these and presenting the opportunities and the successes in a way that resonates with the agent, where they're not being demotivated, where they're understanding why we're looking for these metrics, how we can get there, and how it's going to make their job easier.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And it's an interesting point you brought up there, which is it's such a true point of, how do you kind of mesh both the coaching the individual and you have the SOPs that you have to look into and ensure that maybe the business is still getting the best out of it as well. It is a tough thing to kind of do, but I mean, listen, it's something that hopefully these metrics can help with people. I'm glad you mentioned Scorebuddy reporting, but listen, for any kind of reporting, if you can get those metrics and bring them into coaching, I think it's a huge plus for any organization. Monique, yourself, then, is there anything I suppose you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, a slightly different slant, if that's okay.
Oh,
That's probably, I know.
sure.
Just growing on it and looking at it from a different point of view, a great way of using the data is to potentially have conversations you wouldn't have had before, to identify things such as what motivates the agent, what they enjoy doing, because that then shows a correlation between the work that they love doing and the results that they're getting. And that, as a team leader or as a company, as soon as you understand that, it unlocks a world of possibilities, because then you've got a team where you can highlight who is really good at what, but not only good at it, loves doing it. So there's a passion. So then you can start doing things like cross-training or information, upskilling, and using this talent and the skill that you've got within the team and talking about tracking success. You can then start to track success about it. That's without involving any other outside training. I mean, I'm talking myself out of a job, I know, but there's amazing things that you can do with data and coaching conversations that just give so much richness to a team and a company as a whole. So a slightly different take on it, but hopefully that was useful.
Absolutely. You're not talking yourself out of a job whatsoever, Monique. I'm your biggest fan, so don't worry about that.
Thanks, Rory.
Listen, I agree with both sides of the coin there. It is a tough thing, and I think that's why we've seen a lot from the polls so far. It's been a nice little spread. There's maybe in one of the polls so far there's been a clear winner, but for the most part it's been kind of, everyone has their own kind of opinions on it. And speaking of polls, we're going to go on to our next one now, Dave, if that's okay.
Yeah. Great stuff. Okay, so our second last poll I'm going to launch now, so hopefully everyone can see that. And the question is, which communication technique do you find most effective in your coaching sessions?
Should be a good one.
Active
Honestly,
listening.
this is so exciting.
Yeah. It's real-time data, guys. It's big.
Technology.
Loving it.
I
Wondering how
don't
to do
think
this
everyone
more in my
else can
life.
pop in. Yeah, it's great to see it. Yeah, from our side. So this is another close one, I think. So we've over 60%. So just wait for the remaining few. Okay, that's over 80% now. So okay, so I'm gonna end it now, and over to the panel for input, please.
Thanks very much, David. Interesting here now. Listen, it's good to see, I think, from my own personal opinion, I think nonverbal communication is, listen, if you're trying to read someone's body language or tone of voice, ideally you wouldn't want that yourselves. But I'll go to maybe Monique first on this one. Is there anything there that maybe surprises you, I suppose?
Yeah, the active listening isn't probably a little bit higher,
Yeah.
because without great listening, pretty much all the others is impossible, because actually a level of listening is picking up on nonverbal. It's like if someone says to you, yeah, I'm fine. You're like, wait, no, you're not. You're kind of picking up on kind of what's not being said. But you can only do that if you're doing really great listening. So there you go.
Yeah. And Robin, I suppose as someone who's a big believer in communication, is there anything there as well that would surprise you? Would anything kind of stand out?
Well, my first thought would be, obviously you adapt your training to the agent,
Yeah.
but active listening and the nonverbal are two things that we, mostly the active listening is what we really focus on with our agents, because when we're coaching them and when we're finding opportunities, a lot of the times they're not listening to those little clues, the little nuances of what the customer has said or their tone to really gauge what the customer is doing. So that's very similar to this. Um, as we're coaching, I do want to watch that body language. I do want to watch all of that because you do need to know when your agent's going to get a little bit defensive or questioning, or it's spinning in their head that they're not buying into this at all. So you do need to be aware of those things, and then tweak the way you're approaching it. But
Yeah,
certainly, again, the big one is adapt to them, which is part of watching their mannerisms, their reactions. So I
yeah,
think it
very
goes
true.
hand in hand.
Very true. Yeah, no, listen, it ties well, and thanks for that, David, to our next tip, which is all about enhancing your communication skills. And I know that this is something that all three of us would find is a big one. Um, I think from my point of view, communication is a crucial aspect in any contact center. I think clear and engaging communication not only ensures that feedback is understood, but it also fosters that positive learning environment that we spoke of earlier. And by exploring and kind of implementing various techniques, depending on the organization, maybe the industry, the hope is obviously you can improve communication within your team and can significantly enhance the overall effectiveness of your coaching sessions. So I'd like to start with maybe Monique this time. Monique, can you share maybe your own insights or any maybe experiences you might have on how to cultivate strong communication skills, whether it be in a contact center setting or even anywhere else?
Yeah, the first thing is admitting we're not very good at it. That's just general. Once we get over that small little hurdle, it becomes a lot easier. The reason we're naturally not very good at it is because we all have our own thought process. We've all got that inner voice in our head that's got its own agenda, thoughts, judgments, you name it. So it's very rare that we go into a conversation completely just wanting to understand. Even when I train coaches, there's an agenda there. Oh, I've got to make them be able to see this, or they've got to have this outcome. They've got to be able to grow. So we're going in with an agenda, so therefore automatically we're not going to be fully listening. So the difference between listening to understand versus listening to respond. Listening to respond is where we spend most of our time. Listening to understand takes a lot more energy to be able to do. So in short, even if as a skill, we sit and we work with the idea of listening, you know what? I'm going to park my judgment. I'm going to be present and I'm going to listen. A few things happen there. It builds our empathy. Empathy is amazing. That's listening, curiosity, and emotional connection form empathy. The other element there is, as humans, all we really want to do is feel like we're heard, understood, respected. And if you go into a coaching conversation, being able to generate that as an environment, the conversations you will have will far outpass anything else. So just be aware of what kind of judgments are you going in with? What are some of the assumptions you're going in with? The data will sometimes aid and not aid those conversations, so be aware of that, how it can park it. But that's probably my number one, is listen to understand rather than listening to respond, and building up an environment where it's okay to be curious.
Absolutely, and I like what you said there about being present, because I think and everyone on this webinar today, we've all been there when we feel like we're being coached or we're being spoken to by maybe a superior, and they're not listening, and you're like, I wish they would just, as you said there, be heard. I wish I could be heard a bit more. I suppose, Robin, to you then, obviously, if there's anything you can add, but I know as a keen and excellent coach that you are, is there any kind of practical strategies that you found effective in enhancing kind of communication during those coaching sessions?
Well, I think during the coaching session, you have to have the balance where you are the person in authority and you are presenting information to them and setting those expectations that there needs to be a change, or in certain cases that may not be comfortable. But you have to present it in a way that encourages the individual to um, want to contribute and want to listen. I mean, I have a style where I will joke with them a little bit. I will make sure to say, this is a great job. This part, what do you think? How do we do here? This is great. But how about this little part where that customer got a little angry at you? What do you think we could have could have done. I want to bring them in by telling them the good parts, but tweaking the little things like in a way that is, I'm trying to help you. What I tell my agents, especially like our escalation team, our tier 3 team, I'm not telling you this because I want to nitpick you on this scorecard. We're asking for this because I guarantee if you can kind of work with us and get a little bit more nuanced in how to do this, you're going to have a better call. They're not going to be yelling at you. You're going to get off the call sooner, and it's going to be great. It's just finding a way to present that so that they're not just thinking that you are, this, 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 this. It's to make their job better, make their job easier.
For sure, absolutely. And I like that you mentioned kind of being comfortable. I remember I got a piece of advice before a long time ago was get comfortable being uncomfortable. Because that's, when you're in the heat of it, and you kind of mentioned there, Robin, maybe you're going back over a call with maybe, a customer who was having a bad day or something was wrong. And when you do listen back to those, I find that's where you can learn, because you learn by doing. And if you do make a mistake, I find sometimes that can be one of the best ways to learn of, right, I know not to do that again because I sat down with my coach and we understand each other as well. So listen, that was one of my I was very interested to see that one, and very, very interested to see if there's any questions coming from that as well. But we're going to get on now, guys, to our final tip. But before we do, we have one final poll. David, if that's all right with yourself.
Yeah, onto the last poll. And it should be appearing on the screen. So if you want to please vote away. What do you believe is the most crucial element in creating a supportive coaching environment in your contact center? So we've 5 options there, and I can see the votes starting to come in. So regular one-to-one feedback sessions, team building activities, peer mentoring programs, recognition of improvement efforts, or open door policy for questions and concerns. So just 3 of them there that are getting good votes. No one has voted for team building activities, which is maybe
It's
a bit of a
unfortunate.
surprise. I love them actually, yeah. Okay, so over 70% voted so far, so we'll give it another 5 seconds before we end. And okay, it looks like we're done on that. So let me end and share the results, and then over to the panel. Another tight one.
Another tight one, yeah, that's right, David. Once again, myself and David love our team building activities, but listen, I would understand why maybe some people wouldn't be maybe drawn to that option. And Robin, I might go to you first on this one. I suppose you through Scorebuddy, and once again, not to be plugging Scorebuddy, but you know about the one-to-one request sessions that Scorebuddy
Yes.
can do. Is that a surprise to you that was kind of the winner?
No, not at all. Because that's one thing that I really encourage with our team and with our supervisors and getting people involved in Scorebuddy, because there is always that element of, I want our team to perform on an interaction because it's the right way to do it, not because Scorebuddy is asking for you to do it. It's again, Scorebuddy and our grading is designed based on the best way to handle an interaction. So I encourage them to ask those one-on-ones, because if they don't ask, they're not going to learn. And it also helps my quality people. If we did something wrong or if those questions are not right, I want to make it right for my agents. So I encourage that open door and that one-on-one. And if we made a mistake, well, we're human, we'll fix it. If not, we're going to try and explain to you how to do it the next time.
For sure,
So
absolutely. And from a Scorebuddy side, I agree with you, Monique. As somebody who maybe on a bit more on the outside, in the sense of you have your own kind of business in this. Is there anything here that surprises you?
Yeah, mainly what's missing.
Yeah,
Just again,
absolutely.
is the idea around culture and the environment in which what we're taking is acceptable. So are we working in a culture that celebrates learning moments? And I'll give an example of that a bit later, but it's down to what is seen as the norm And what psychological safety do you have in place for the teams and the company as a whole, where people feel like they can put their hand up and ask for help, or they feel like they can admit to mistakes and get the support that they need. So there's a few other ones in there. That's a bit unfair, though. It's not really in the poll, is it? I feel a bit rebellious today. I'm quite liking it, though. But yeah, so thinking about the culture is also some additional ones that would be of benefit.
Absolutely. No, listen, that's great. That's what we're here for. And thanks very much, David, for that final poll. We are going to move on now, excuse me, to our fifth and final tip. And kind of going off of what our panelists said today, and something that we do want to focus on is creating kind of that supportive environment. In any kind of coaching scenario, in my opinion, the environment itself plays a real crucial role. Not just in kind of effectiveness and maybe longevity of the learning experience, but building that kind of supportive coaching environment. It means you can foster a culture where, as Monique said, there is open dialogue, collaboration, ongoing kind of teaming, whether it be with somebody maybe superior to kind of hopefully teach you in the future, but something that maybe should be ingrained in the daily operations of a business. To kind of, I suppose, gain deeper insights into how we can cultivate such an environment, I'd like to start with Monique this time. How do you think, Monique, contact centers effectively create and sustain a supportive coaching environment that drives that continuous improvement and hopefully employee engagement?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that came up for me here and it's kind of resonated as we've spoken through. The one is creating some kind of agreement of how your coaching relationship is going to be. So coach to coachee, what is that relationship going to be like? What are things you expect from each other? What are kind of the ground rules as a coach? How can I call you out when I feel like you're not really being present or I'm not hearing everything? What are the signs that you know you do when you do that? So having great open conversations about how the relationship is going to be before you even get into any of the coaching, because that builds a foundation of trust and empowerment to be able to do that. And for the coach to be able to go, look, remember when you said that you actually shut down when you don't want to talk about it and you told me the best thing I can do is call it out? Well, I'm doing that now. So how do we want to handle that? That's far less combative than where you're not saying anything. You've shut down. You're clearly not interested. Because there is a danger in reading nonverbals is that you'll get it wrong. Just because someone's sitting there like that doesn't mean they're disinterested. It might mean that's just a very comfortable position to sit in. Or the fact that they're not answering, they might be reflecting and thinking about it, but we might take it one way. So spending time designing how you're going to have that conversation, how you're going to be with each other, call each other out. It works both ways. As coaches, we need to be able to go, look, you can call me out on this and stuff as well. But the other thing that's really come out as we've spoken, I talked about culture. WD-40, really random organization I'm going to pull in now, are amazing at building culture. If you want, I'll share in the chat a link to a video of the CEO talking about culture. But they speak about the Maniac Pledge. Now, it's only a paragraph, and I'm going to read it for you now. It's to nurture a culture of accountability, which at the heart of coaching is what it's about, right? Accountability for growth and what you're going to do. The pledge states, I am responsible for taking action, asking questions, getting answers, and making decisions. I won't wait for someone to tell me. If I need to know, I'm responsible for asking. I have no right to be offended that I didn't get this sooner. If I'm doing something others should know about, I'm responsible for telling them. And everyone in the company signs up to this. And they don't have failures, they have learning moments. And it's actively encouraged to go, oh, I've had a learning moment. That was tough. Let me share with you what happened there and how I'm dealing about it. So I talked about what culture you're creating. This can be done at team level. This can be done at department level or organizational level to be done. So if you're thinking, oh, I'd love to do that, but I'm running a team or I'm only head of a department, you can certainly create a microculture within that speaks to something like that.
Excellent. Love that little paragraph on WD-40. Wasn't aware of that. So that's a really kind of cool
Post it
thing.
in the chat if anyone
Do,
wants
yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Yes,
I'd love
please
to.
do that.
It's a great one. And you mentioned there kind of foundation of trust and accountability. I mean, it can be hard. I'm sure we all know, and contact centers can have high turnover of staff,
Mhm.
and it can be hard to kind of constantly go, right, I have to build this trust again with this new human. And I actually see a very good question in the chat there that we'll get to maybe after this. But Robin, I'd like to put the same question to you as someone who's dealing in this contact center environment day in, day out. How do you kind of deal with this and create and sustain that kind of supportive coaching environment?
Well, what I do is, I'm based in the States, and all of our call centers are near shore. And when I travel there as the head of quality, for when I first started walking into those centers, they were terrified of me. It's
Yeah.
like you could see they were sitting up. It was like, oh gosh, she's here, she's here. By the time I'm done at the end of the week, we are joking, we're having a great time. They're asking me crazy questions. They're getting up and coming over. The key is to get your supervisors, get your managers, your leads to have conversations with your team. It sounds cliche, but ask them how their day's going. If it looks like they were struggling on a call, go say, hey, everything okay here? What's going on? What happened? Tell me. Talk to your team. Encourage them to ask those questions. And hey, if you get a question and you know you'd already helped somebody else that had done that question, say, hey, Mary, do me a favor, come over here. Monique has this question. Can you tell her what you did? Build that team environment. Ask the questions. Get to know your team. Encourage them to ask you. So when you get into those coaching sessions, they might be more receptive.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. No, listen, it's it's something that I think of quite a lot. I'm very lucky with Monique. Obviously, you've met all of our team, the team that I'm on, and we're very encouraging of each other. But it is that classic, and it's a throwaway line that people use a lot of, oh, every day is a school day, but it really is. There is not a day that goes by that I am not learning from somebody within my team, within my organization, and days where I believe if you are sitting still and you don't want to learn, you'll just get bored. And the fact is that you have those conversations, Robin, as you said, with your team. Hey, Mary, come here, let's have a discussion on this, because I think it just fosters everything we've kind of spoken about today, and leads to better results really as well. Well, listen, guys, that is the 5 tips, I suppose, that we wanted to go through. And very quickly, I would like to thank both Monique and Robin for going through all that with us today. David, I'll throw it back to you, I suppose. Is there any other questions in the chat, or anything else there you'd
Yeah,
like to?
yeah, great conversation so far, and I'll save the thanks until the end. Yeah, we have a few questions here, and Monique, I see you answered one of them, but we'll get to it in a sec. So the first question, and again, apologies if I butcher your first name, but the first one is from Samantha. Are there any specific recommendations when it comes to coaching sessions with 100% remote reps? I find it's much harder for them to buy in than our in-house reps. So any
Great question.
recommendations there, Robin
Yes.
or Monique?
Well, that's a great question, and I agree. And part of the thing that you have to overcome is a lot of people do not like being on camera. Just the technology makes it even harder than sitting face to face. So personally, I kind of try to start it off and kind of fall on the sword a little bit about, oh goodness, I'm sorry, this technology, I can't stand being on camera. Hope you don't mind. Thanks for being on camera. Lighten it up, make a joke. Oh, I'm sorry, I had a little trouble getting online because I'm technology clueless. There's something to bring yourself down a little bit to lighten the subject. And then just ask, how's your day? It sounds cliche, how's the weather? But, if you know that they just had a big storm there, how's everybody doing? How's the island? Or, just get a little personal right in the beginning to try and loose it up and then just go into the conversation. But I think softening it up in a little bit in the beginning goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. And Monique, I know this is something that you deal with quite often. Would you have anything else maybe you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, you've got to work a little bit harder when you're remote. As a coach, probably about 80% of the coaching I do is remote. Coach with people all over the world and different teams, it has to be remote. So that's why spending the time upfront building the relationship is really important to be able to do so. And also find out what works for the individual. I don't know if this is actually practical for some of you, but sometimes going, you know what, the next call we do, let's get on our phones. I'm going to phone you. You go for a walk if the weather's nice. I'll go for a walk. let's just get out of the environment. The conversations you might have in that space can be completely different to what it might be if you're right, you're sat screen by screen, because you kind of just, I'm still in my work environment, but removing that and being creative. Think about how you might do it. Ask them a coaching question. What would get the most out of this for you? How can we make sure that you're really engaged? Put the onus back on them. That's what I would say.
That's great feedback. Okay, we have a few there to get through, and I'm just conscious of the time, so let me move on to the next one. Now, Monique, you have answered this one. So Tina had a question. You mentioned about the SBIR coaching model. What does the S stand for? Situation. Just for completeness. B is behavior, I is impact, and R is response request. So we'll move on to the next one. And we have a question here from Sana Wubble. Again, I knew I was going to make a aims of someone's name. So what is the appropriate time frame to do a follow-up session after the first coaching session? Who wants to take that one?
I usually give about a week.
Yeah.
And that way you can catch the issue sooner rather than later. But give them a couple days to learn and practice. Hopefully by the end of a few days they've gotten better at it. But usually about 5 days.
Yeah, depends on what it is. If it's something that needs quick
True.
momentum, you're right. It can be a week, sometimes a couple of weeks, months, dare I say, if it's a bigger thing. But yes, I agree, Robin.
Great. Next one then is from Gasmin. So considering that there are goals metrics, team members have expressed feeling overwhelmed when trying to reach target goals. They mentioned that the atmosphere culture solely focuses on metrics. What tools could be used to shift their focus when giving coaching conversation? Any tips there? Any tools?
Yeah, I would say don't forget the human element. Metrics are a part of it, but if you can have a percentage, even if it's a small percentage, around what personally they're doing, that might be their own development, their attitude towards something, their outlook. I don't know, they might have more of a growth mindset moving forward, whatever it is. If you can attach that to a metric or even have it as something on its own, it removes that focus that it is only on the numbers, which is something I hear quite often.
And I also think it's important for them to know the why. I'm big on the big picture. They need to know full circle. I'm asking you to cross this T because if you don't, when it gets to the next department, if they tend to know the whys, and again, not that we're just nitpicking, it's that it's going to make the next person's easier. The order's going to go out. They're not going to call back yelling. That helps a little bit. And then it's just working with them. Again, everything that we've gone over today. Find what makes them tick, guide them, coach them, provide constructive feedback, encourage them, give them successes. And, ultimately it is a business. So we do always have to bring it back to that. It is a business. These are, and also the other thing I'd say is you always have to go back and evaluate. Are these KPIs that we've set in place, are they ideal? Is this realistic? And bring them into the conversation too. Bring your agent in. I understand this seems tough. We're always evaluating, but this is what we think works, but give them the full picture and the whys.
Great feedback. Okay, so we'll try and squeeze in a couple more. Another one here from Son Wubble. What recommendations would you advise to coach a coach? Really like this one. Most of the time in call centers, we focus on coaches to agents, but seldomly focus on coaching the coach. Great one there, I think. So, Monique, you're nodding there. Do you want to kick off on that one?
Peer coaching's a must. So coaches must coach other coaches. Professional coaches have coaches to keep us kind of honest and be able to do it. It's a bit like psychiatrists have psychiatrists to kind of unpack and understand and learn things. It's best practice to keep you on your game as a coach, but also to process your feelings around the conversations you had. What triggered you? How could you be a bit more present? So you've got to be able to unpack what happened for you as well. So yes, coaches have coaches.
There's always something to learn. You can always do something differently or better. So
yeah, great one. Okay, I think we'll take this one as the last one then from Tina. We could be here all day with all the questions popping in. How do you coach an agent when they do not accept they have done something wrong, I guess? Or so how do you coach someone that cannot accept that they've done something? How do you approach
That's
that?
a tough one. Again, I think you've got to start with the why you're asking for this. Encourage them to listen to the interaction. Listen to good calls or a good interaction in that situation. Have them compare it to theirs. See if they can pick up. Unfortunately, at some point, if they can't pick up legitimately, if it's something is very clear, then that's another conversation, which is a legitimate conversation. But sometimes if they hear and listen to it themselves and you ask them what they think, they're like, oh, I can't believe I did that. It's like a light bulb goes off.
Love that. I always encourage people to think about there might be 2 degrees of truth in what people are saying. So even some of the toughest conversations and fallouts I deal with team coaching or couples coaching, they go, that's not true. And I say, okay, well, if there was just 2 degrees or 2% of truth in what they were saying, what would that mean? And they'll go, okay, well, maybe it's this. Okay, so focus on that. So let's grow that 2% if you have to embody it. So it's not saying you're wrong, but it's encouraging them to force a part of their brain to think critically on their own opinions. So 2 degrees of truth or 2% of truth is a really nice one to be able to talk to them about.
Yeah. Great. Okay, well, listen, we're out of time. Thank you, Monique. Thank you, Robin. Fantastic discussion, as you can see by the amount of questions. Really, really important topic, and Rory, as ever, for guiding us through that. Really appreciate everyone. Thanks to everyone for joining in today. And just a couple of things. This session is being recorded, so it'll be available within 24 hours on the same link. Don't worry, we'll send you a recording link. And also, as you leave today, a survey feedback. If you have any other ideas about any webinars or any topics you'd like us to cover, there is a section within that to give your feedback. So again, wrapping up, thanks for everyone and have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks very much, guys.
Bye-bye.